Hi, this is Sandra. In the previous video, I wrote the code to select the learners from the database, and you can see here down the bottom, I just printed them out into the output or console window. In this video, I want to replicate here what I have on the screen. So it's getting that information that we got from the database and displaying it in this table on a frame. So there's one I've done earlier. I'm going to delete that now and just show you how to do it again. Okay. So I'm going to just delete what I have done there. Now, so on the left hand side here in the projects window, into the view, because we're creating a new frame. So onto that package, I'm going to right click new JFrame form, and I'm going to call this view all learners and finish. Now on the frame, I'm going to put on a label to say view all learners, and see from the swing controls here as well, there's a table. There's a table somewhere. Oh, there we go, just hidden out of view. So tables, if you hover over that, you can see it's a JTable, so I'm going to drag that on there as well. Now, so firstly, just change the shape and size there of the table, and my label on top there, right click, edit text, view all learners. And just to make that look pretty, I'm going to just change the size of it. I'm going to drag it across the whole width of the frame, and now in the properties window, the font, click there, I can change the size of the font, the foreground, click on the ellipsis there on the right, and pick a color, and finally horizontal alignment, I'm going to change that to center, so it's in the center of the frame. Now this is a JTable. And the most important property there, if you see in the properties window, close the output window, click on the JFrame, see in the properties window the model property. Now it's nicely highlighted there, so that's the most important property. I'm clicking on the ellipsis there beside that. And by default there are 4 columns there, but I want to change it. I'm going to leave 4 columns, but I want ID, name, address, and age. And I'm going to say what data type each one is. So it's a little bit tricky to select all the text there. If you start typing, it goes after. Okay, delete. So ID, and the ID is going to be an integer. The next one will be the name, and that's going to be a string. Address is going to be a string. And the last one there is going to be age, yeah, and that's going to be an integer. And do I want the user to be able to edit them? No, I don't. So I'm going to uncheck the 4 of those. Now I'm just going to click OK on that. You can see here that there are 4 rows in that table already. Now I'm going to be adding from code. I'm going to add each row in. So if I leave those 4 rows, I'm going to get 4 blank rows and then the rows I've added in. So go back into that model property, and down the bottom it has 4 rows. Just decrease that to 0 because I'm going to be adding them in code. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm going to go into the code behind this frame, and what I want to do, I want a global variable that will hook up to the DAO class where my code is to select everything from the database. So that class is called Learner, using control space here twice, LearnerDAO. I'm making sure I use control space because I want the import up above, because I'm currently in the view package and it's in the controller package. So LearnerDAO, and now I'm going to instantiate that in the constructor here after init components. So init components is the automatically generated code where it puts on the table and any changes I've done there in the model property. So LearnerDAO equals new LearnerDAO. Now, so that will, I'm just going to pop over here to the LearnerDAO there for a second just to show you, that will go into the constructor. It has the URL for the connection string, and if there's any issues there, it will catch any problems and print it out. Now, I want to change this. I now don't like this code. Instead of the catch being in here, I don't want to catch it in here. I want to throw the exception back to the calling code, because this DAO class, it does any connections to and from the database, and the same with the closed connection. I should probably throw that out of there. So I'm going to change this one. I'm going to remove the try and the catch, and just tidy up the code a little bit. Now this is going to end up killing some code that I've written previously, so I need to change that as well. Now, so instead of a try-catch here, in the constructor here, I'm going to have throws SQL exception. So if something goes wrong, it's going to throw it out of this class. And now back to my frame. Now I need a try-catch around here. So this is my frame, this is my view, this is where it gets visual. So I'm going to say try the following line of code. I'm aware that it might throw an exception, so it's here. I'm going to catch it. It's an SQL exception, and if it occurs here, this is the GUI, this is the view, and that's where I'm going to put in the JOption pane to show the message there. So JOption pane, I don't know why that keeps popping up with record NetBeans, might be a little bug. JOption pane dot show message dialog. I'm going for the second overloaded method here. So this is the parent component, the message, error connected to the database. The title, just put in error, database error. And tab there to the last, the message type. So they are constants in the JOption pane class, and the message type for this one will be an error message. Now, and for me, the programmer, I want to see exactly what's gone wrong. So the connection string was wrong or something else. So e.print stack trace, that will let me know. Now, where am I at? That's just setting up the LearnerDAO on my design. So when I instantiate this frame, which I'm going to do from my main frame, just go back for that one, my learner frame. I'll be doing that from here. I'm going to add on another button to, I have the button there from the last day, to select all learners. Now, because I've changed the try-catcher, I'm just after killing this code here, so I'm going in behind just to see where the error is. You can see the red there on the right-hand side. So again, this, the learner frame, I'm just going to pop in similar code, so similar to speed things up. I'm just going to go and copy it. So just that catch and to copy that. Come back to the learner frame. So it's better to have the catches in the view and display the message if something went wrong here and not essentially in the DAO class. I'll need to do the same with the closed connection, but I'll do that when I'm not recording just to speed things up a little bit. Now, view all learners. So what I want to do now is back into my code. In the constructor, I have view all learners in a component that puts the table onto the frame. Now, that will create a connection to the DAO class where I can do my selecting all the learners now. Now I'm going to call the code from the DAO class to get me all the learners, and I'm going to put that information into the table. I'm not going to put it in here. I'm going to create a separate method to do that, and I'm going to call the method from here. So let's write that method first of all. Private, because I'm only calling it from just above. It's not returning anything void, and it's going to populate learner table. It doesn't take in any parameters, and it's going to do all the work in there. I'm going to call that method from up here. I'll explain why now. The reason I'm calling it from here, if it can connect to the database, there won't be any errors thrown there, and that will be the next line of code that will execute to populate the table on the form. If there is an issue connecting to the database, it's going to jump to the catch, and therefore it won't go ahead and populate that table. Now, so in here, I'm going to call from the LearnerDAO class. I'm just going to go across to that, LearnerDAO. I'm going to call this method getAllLearners, and it returns a list of learners. It returns an array list, so that's what I'm going to call. So here, it returns an array list, so array list, use control space there, I need to do that twice, array list, with the angle brackets. Control space for learner there as well, twice, so that I get the import because it's in the model package and I'm in the view package at the minute. So array list containing learner objects, list of learners equals, so it's from the DAO class. Now I have that reference up there, so LearnerDAO dot get all learners. See there, that returns an array list. Now, there's a possibility at the very, very start of this application there's nothing in the database and that list will be empty. So I'm going to check for that first of all. List of learners, if list of learners dot is empty. If the list is empty, I'm just going to display a message that there are no learners in the database. So that would be JOption pane dot show message dialog. This is the parent component. What is the message on it? There are no learners in the database. The title, empty list, I guess. And message type, it's an information one this time, so JOption pane dot information. So that's the icon there on the dialog. I'll move this down so we can go over that red line. That red line, by the way, is just when you're printing. That's where the end of the page is. So if the list is empty, show a message. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and populate that table on the frame. Now, that table, you can see when I set up those columns, I went into the model property. So in the code in the background, and I never renamed this as well, I'm going to right click there, change variable name, TBL learners. So in the code, I'm going to use that TBL learners dot Getmodel property, and it's on that I can add on a new row, and I'm going to be looping through the array list and adding rows onto that model property. Within the source. Now here, so my table on the form is called TBL learners dot Getmodel. That returns a table model. Now, table model is an interface, so it's going to return not an instance of that interface, because you can't instantiate an interface. It would be a class that implements that interface and possibly has additional methods added in. Now, with a lot of research and a lot of Googling back for me to initially find out how to do this, it returns that Getmodel. I need to assign it to a reference. If I assign it to table model, that doesn't give me access to the add row method, which is what I need. So on the left-hand side here, what I need to assign that to is a class that implements that interface called default table model. Default table model. Now control space here again. Default table model so that I get the import as well. I'm just going to call that model. Now, on the right-hand side, Getmodel returns a table model type, like the parent type. I've assigned it to a child reference. It's a bit like, if you did my other videos, it's a bit like the parent shape reference. That's what it returns, a shape type. But I want to call one of the methods that are in one of the subtypes, like one of the triangle or the rectangle methods. So what I need to do is I need to convert what's on the right-hand side, or cast, from the parent type down into the child type. And you do that by that cast, so brackets beforehand, and the same type as I have there on the left-hand side, default table model. Default table model. So that returns table model, parent type. I'm downcasting to default table model, and now I have access to a method called add row. So I'm going to do model.addRow. Now I'll be doing that there in a few minutes. It'll be model.addRow. It takes in an array, an object array. So I'm going to put in new object array, square brackets, and my array, I'm going to specify in here, in those curly brackets, it's going to be the learner's ID, their name, address, and their age. So I need to get that information still. Now, first line up here, I have a list of learners. Containing in the list is learner objects. Each learner object, then I can do a get ID, get name, and so on. I'm going to end up passing those values into the curly brackets. Firstly, there are loads of learners, so I need to loop through that list. So I'm using the enhanced for loop to loop through that list of learners. On the right-hand side is what I'm looping through. On the left-hand side, declare one of what's in that list. So it's a learner. Oops. Learner. Now in here I want to retrieve each piece of information, each member from that learner. So what I'm going to do is just declare them separately to make the next line 58 there add row a bit easier. So int id equals learner.getID, and that's in the learner class that we wrote in the model package. Next one is string name equals learner.getName. Next one, string address equals Learner.getAddress, and the last one is an int for age equals Learner.getAge. Yeah. Now, so I'm looping through the array list that I got back from the DAO class. I'll spot something up there. I'll look back at it in a sec. Now, so I've got all the 4 pieces of information here that I need, and now onto the model, onto the table, I'm going to add in a new row. This method wants an object array. In the curly brackets there, I can pass in any data types at all. So an array of any data types is going to be the ID, it's going to be the name, the address, and the age. Now, can I find symbol ID? Okay, I should have that inside the for loop and not outside it. So it's inside, so the loop is going through the list of learners, and as it picks up one row from the list, or one learner from the list, it's going to add that information onto the table that's displayed on the GUI. Now, and I forgot up here that the LearnerDAO class, the getAllLearners, it might throw, if I go across there for a second, LearnerDAO, getAllLearners, it might throw an SQL exception. So around my code here, I need to say, try the following code. Now I'm going to tab the whole lot across. If that works okay and connects to the database, then go ahead and do everything else. If it doesn't work okay, that's where I'm going to do a catch an SQL exception E, and then display a message to the user that it couldn't connect to the database, and do a print stack trace there as well. Here, I'll just pause this while I'm typing that up. The software won't let me do that. I have to do it live. Option pane.show message dialog, current component this, unable to connect to the database. And the title, database error, and the message type, option pane dot error message. And I'm going to pop in here need a print stack trace for something does go wrong, so that I can read the stack trace to see what the problem was. Now that should be it. What I'm going to do here, I've called that method populate learner table in the constructor. When you create a frame, it'll automatically give you a main method. I'm just going to run this class just to test that works. It's going to call a constructor to create the frame and make it visible, and the code in the constructor will end up calling that populate learner. So right click on my learner frame and run file. And we'll see that that works okay. Then I'll take out the main and I'll call it from my main frame there. Okay, I have ran the wrong one here. View all learners is what I'm working on. Right click, run file. And there we go, that has populated everything onto that frame for me. Now I'm going to remove that main method because I'm not going to use it again. Now, and then back to the other frame that I clicked on by accident there. I have a button there, the design to select all the learners, and in there I'm going to instantiate select all learners. Okay, I have code there already that was going straight to the database just to test out my database code. So I'm going to change that now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to instantiate the other frame, new, view all learners. That will call the constructor, which will call the code that populates the frame, and frames are not invisible, or sorry, are invisible by default. So set visible there to true. We need to do that for any frame. Okay, now I can click the run button on the whole application. Give it a second there to run, and now select all learners, and that will open up the second frame there. Okay, so what I want to do in the next video is to click on one of these and then have it, I don't know if I'll double click or go back through a button, but I'll decide that as I'm doing it. Click on one of the learners here and have it go back to this frame and pop everybody in the frame, and then at least you can you can edit the name or edit the address and update it in the database. Okay, thank you.